Hey everybody, welcome back to Gecko Tech and Gaming. So anyone who's familiar with the gaming scene in general has probably heard of Zowie. They've been in the professional gaming community for as long as professional gaming has been a thing. So for this video, I'm going to take a look at one mouse from each series. We have the ZA13B, the EC3C, the FK1C, and the S2C. I'm going to look at their grip style, what feels the best, what my hand size and grip style is, and who I think each mouse might be most beneficial for. First off, my hand size is 17.5 centimeters from palm to fingertip of the middle finger, and then 10.5 from the widest part of my hand, closed like this. Now, I mostly play FPS games. We've got Call of Duty, Overwatch, and Apex being the ones I play the most. My grip style is going to be a bit more of a relaxed claw grip, almost bordering on a fingertip grip, depending on the mouse that I'm using. So I want you to know that up front so you have a point of reference as to where I'm coming from when I give my opinions on each of these mice and who it might be best for. Now, for some of the commonalities between all of these mice, they're all going to be using Huano blue shell white dot switches. They're all rated for 20 mil, so not super durable. They're all using Pixart 3360 sensors. It's a little bit of an older sensor, but it's still considered a flawless sensor, and I noticed during use that they're very, very snappy, feels very accurate. I didn't have any trouble with tracking accuracy, lift-off distance, everything felt great. The matte coating on all these mice is very grippy. I don't think you're gonna need any grip tape or anything like that. Because the coating is so grippy, I actually noticed that it picks up fingerprints and smudges fairly easy and pretty quickly, but it wipes off easy enough, and the fact that it's so grippy is really good for competitive play, so your grip isn't slipping around or anything like that. Scroll wheel on all of these mice are very well tensioned. They actually have almost like an audible click with each step as you're scrolling up and down. The skates are surprisingly very smooth out of the box, but they are very thin black PTFE. So durability wise, I'm not super confident. However, every single one of these mice came with an extra set of PTFE feet, so there's some good value there. The EC3C is up first. So this is an ergonomic mouse, very similar to a lot of OEM ergonomic mice. You can see one from Ponage. A lot of companies are copying this shape. Now, the hump I find on the EC3C is a little bit more forward middle rather than dead set in the middle. I find that having that hump a little bit more forward with a little bit less mass in the back end of it actually gave a little bit more room for my palm. So if I wanted to, I could use fingertip with the EC3C fairly well without any issues. Relaxed claw grip, my preferred grip, was very easy to pull off and felt very natural in hand. I've used a lot of ergo mice, Death Adder, Mamba, Pulsar X-Lite, and those ones just didn't feel great. But this EC3C feels really nice in game, and in terms of performance, I actually did much better than I expected. One exception to that was the Steelseries Prime Mini, but I actually find that I perform a little bit better with the EC3C compared to the Prime Mini, even though I felt more precise with the narrow front end of the Steelseries Prime Mini. I found myself just being actually more accurate in game and landing more shots with the EC3C. Next up is the S2C. This is the smaller Zowie S mouse. This one is kind of short overall, and it feels very stocky in hand. Now, another mouse that feels like it fills out the hand like this is the Logitech G Pro. However, the shape is very different, and I actually find myself preferring this very much. It's kind of unique in that it's a medium profile mouse, but in hand, the way the shape of the hump is, it actually fills out the palm very well. In use in game, I could claw it, but I found myself moving towards a palm grip actually, even though that's really not my preferred grip style. Fingertip is definitely a no-go for this unless you have very large hands. What I found very interesting is that palm grip on this is probably the most comfortable palm grip of any mouse I've used, especially for symmetrical mice. The front end is raised, which makes it feel a little more clunky. However, that little bit of extra space at the front end gives a little bit more room for my fourth finger to be able to hold onto the mouse. So it ends up being super comfortable to palm grip this mouse for me. Again, I don't feel as nimble with the S2, but that comfort is pretty hard to beat. If you're looking for something that's symmetrical, good for palm, and feels just wonderful, especially for wider, stockier hands, the S2 is a great choice. Now for the ZA13C. This one was kind of weird. This is the most unique feeling mouse that I've used compared to anything else so far. This thing is exclusively a claw grip mouse, in my opinion. I couldn't really palm grip it that well. It's very narrow, so your fifth and fourth fingers are going to be bunched up a whole lot if you try and palm this mouse, even for small medium hands. Fingertip is also a hard no. It has a pretty unique silhouette, very high profile mouse with a very aggressive hump. This hump gives you a ton of stability though when you're using claw grip. That's pretty hard to replicate. On top of the stability with that aggressive hump, there are also these notches projected at the front end of the mouse that give you a little bit more grip to lift up the mouse when you're repositioning the mouse on your mouse pad for that fourth finger. It's not really a necessary inclusion, but you can tell all of these design choices were very purposely made, and honestly, it's very well thought through. As for performance for me, I didn't do great with it. I did okay. I don't do very well with an overly aggressive claw grip or pincer grip, and that's really what this mouse is made for. I really like a little bit more wiggle room to be able to make those micro adjustments with finger movement, but if you're looking for something with superb stability for claw grip, this is the way to go. Okay, last up is the FK1C. Now, I would have preferred the FK2. The size would have been a little bit better for my hands, but the FK1 was really the only one available at the time. And thankfully, the FK1 is very close in size and dimensions to something like the Viper or the Model O. That being said, if you've used a Viper or a Model O, you've more or less used an FK mouse. So the shapes and the sizes aren't precisely the same, but functionally speaking, they're very similar. With the Viper, it's overall a little bit wider and the front end flares out quite a bit more, but otherwise the silhouette and the general feel in the hand is very similar. The Model O is also very similar, and I find that it's actually closer to the FK shape than the Viper. But regardless, if you've used any of those two mice, more or less you've used an FK. Now the FK is a fairly long and slender mouse. It's also very low profile, so it actually gives it a very nimble feel in hand when you're playing games. And I do notice that the general design of the FK and all of the Zowie mice actually, there are a lot of rounded edges. It's much more human friendly than a lot of competitor mice, which have a lot of more jagged edges that seem more stylistic than functional. Now, because of that low profile, I also find that it's a little bit easier on the wrist. Since you don't have to dorsiflex your wrist as much, I find that it's actually ergonomically, mechanically speaking, a lot easier on your wrist. Now, in-game using this mouse, I did primarily relax claw grip on it, and it performed decently well, partly because I'm just already so familiar with this shape. It wasn't my best, but performed plenty well with it overall. So in terms of performance, as in how well was I performing in-game with aiming, I would have ranked them from best to worst, EC3, ZA13, and then a tie between the FK1 and the S2. Now for comfort, it's a little different. I would have ranked them S2, then EC3, FK1, and last is the ZA13. Even though I did decently with the ZA13, I did notice that how narrow the mouse was. I actually got a little bit of cramping in my pinky and my fourth finger with extended use. So the long and short of each of these, the ZA13, excellent for claw grip or pincer grip, not really usable for other grip styles in my opinion, but it did give my hand a bit of a cramp. S2, the most pleasant palm grip symmetrical mouse I've ever used, even though it's not necessarily the best performing. The EC3 was great, and I think for me, it got the best of both worlds. Very comfortable to use, while also being very nimble in hand. That little bit of extra space at the palm gave me good micro adjustment, and I just performed very well with it. You can do claw and fingertip. I wouldn't recommend palm unless you had very small hands for that one. The FK is pretty good for a claw grip. You might be able to fingertip if you get the smaller size or if you have medium large to large hands. And the positive with that one is that it will feel familiar to a very wide range of gamers. So anyway, that was a lot of information to run through. I hope that kind of helps you with deciding what type of shape you would like more or less. Now, this is only part 1. I do want to still go over the value discussion as well as looking at competition for each of the mice and comparing the B series with the C series. So stick around, that second video will be up on my channel soon. But until that video comes out, y'all stay safe, God bless, and I will see you on the next video. All right? Later.